Why did it always come back to Twilight? Can't we
Because that's what so many people. You talk about vampires and they're like, "Ooh, I love Twilight." Like, why? What? There's what?
It's kind of like the vampire staple.
Staple of vampire lore. It's so bad.
Why is Twilight the vampire staple?
I mean, if we didn't have that, I mean,
shimmery,
what's the next best thing? Like the Count from Sesame Street? Like, is that the next best one?
The Count?
What?
One!
Oh.
Interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a special news bulletin from our partners in the Twisted World.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a special news bulletin from Twisted World.
So I did not check my fantasy football yet because, of course, I'm playing Parsons and I don't want to accidentally see what the score is there. So as far as that's concerned, but I did get this weird update about Burrow. He has 3 touchdowns and 325 yards in the first half.
Oh, dude.
Bro. So I don't know what his points are at right now yet, but they got to be close to 100 or over 100 or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And that's only the first half. All right. So
I've been trying to prepare people because, I talked about how I'm going to start another league out here, kind of similar to the one we have when we were in California that we are still doing now, but just online.
Yeah.
And when I try to explain to people my league, people just are like, "Oh my God, that's crazy! Like, how do you ever
intense.
do it?"
Yeah,
I don't know about you guys. Now, I've played in fantasy leagues for, gosh, it's over 15 years at this point. I've never played in a league. So how it all started is I played in a league one time, a really long time ago, like for just 1 year, and it was a really high scoring league. The way I kind of explain it to people that aren't really into sports, but maybe they understand video games, it's like being on a video game server, like a WoW classic server or something like that, and they do like 100 times XP, right? So like when you go and you do a quest, instead of getting 1,000 XP, you get 10,000 XP. And you're just like, whoa, God, and you level up 4 times. That's how it feels to play in my league, is that you go and you think that you understand how fantasy football really works, but you get to such a minute level that you're like, dude, all I need right now is I need a 40-yard interception, return for a touchdown, and then they have to sack him, and if they can sack him, he'll get a half point for the tackle, he'll get 2 points for and you start looking at the football in a totally different way, to the point where you're like, I could win, and you're down by like 180 points. Yeah. You're like, but I could still win,
bro. So I like the guys at the church where they play one of every position, right? So I've played 4 other times in my life, and the last time I played was pre 2017 when my life got twisted upside down a little bit, but it was similar to what they're playing, like when they
standard.
I'm looking at their league, standard scoring, right? So single player, and so I got the pleasure of being a part of you guys' draft last year. I did not play in that season, but I got to watch it, right? I got to take part in it and see what it was about, and I was like,
you drafted the winning team.
I took part in it. Yeah, I know he moved a lot of things around, so he took his piece, but yeah, that was a good piece at the end. But the fact that I sat there and I watched, like I watched all you guys' scoring through the season, and I'm like, this is bonkers. And you guys, you had punters, I remember, and it was nuts.
Yeah, and nuts. So like, this is not a fantasy football podcast, but it's our podcast. We talk about whatever we want.
Yeah, we're just kicking it off. We're in football season, right?
I'm sure at some point Cody's going to talk about Magic halfway through the episode, so who cares?
Or furries, but whatever.
We've been in the episode for like 30 seconds. I've already mentioned video games and football and Magic. So
and furries.
And furries. Furries just got thrown in there.
And I would like to bring up that I did not bring it up this time.
I'm stoking the flame a little,
I think I just overlooked that. I didn't want to talk about it, but anyways, I've suppressed it way down. But for those that that actually do play fantasy football, usually you just play like you're playing a normal whatever, and all the points are pretty stacked and standard. And I would say like a standard league with a normal amount of players you're supposed to have, like 150 points is like a really good day. Like you get if you break 150 points in a standard league, you're like God tier, right?
Yeah.
In my league, that's like one individual that has a good day. One player on your team. Mind you, we start, I think, was it 12 positions, 13 positions, maybe more?
2 of everything but kicker and defense, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I did early on is maybe the first couple of years, the changes that we made in the league were very basic, nothing really major. Maybe we added 2 more people to the league because 8 was just too shallow. Everybody had good teams and it wasn't a lot of fun. So we made it 10 players. But after about 3 years of playing and we finally kind of started getting our bearings, I remember telling guys like, now we're going to shake it up. And every year. Now I have 2 other commissioners, but every year we have added new changes to the league. And so what it does is it makes it non-boring. It makes some years it absolutely sucks, right? Some years the changes you're like, man, these were the worst changes ever. It's like having punters that score 85 points. Worst change ever. It was the worst change ever. I mean, there's been worse years than that, but it just some years sometimes it's a win, sometimes it's not. But every year is different, and so what it does is it causes you to have to rethink your drafting. It causes you how you rethink as far as trades. Every year you have to go through that painstaking effort of going through and just changing things up. So I like that because it kind of keeps me on my toes. I'd like to think that I'm good at fantasy football, but having changes every year where you have to make changes. I mean, unless you're Cody, who just isn't good at fantasy football. Just kidding.
If you just suck at fantasy football.
I'd be curious to see what Cousins does, though. Just
Andy
was talking about it a little earlier. So now that
with the changes,
Odell and
I don't know if Beckham's actually playing though. Once he actually gets in. Okay, that makes sense. Once he gets in the swing of things and he's playing, I'd be interested to see what happens to that offense. But
I digress. Too late for me by that time, but yeah.
What is your record right now, Cody?
Like let's see, 1-5. Gonna be 1-6 here in a minute. At the end of the day, probably.
I've been dreading bye weeks because my quarterbacks back-to-back weeks had bye weeks. So last week did not go well, and Aaron took the crown. He didn't take the crown from me, but he did topple
because you're still in first place.
My reign. Yeah. I am in first place, but uncontested. But I was trying to go for the undefeated season, and he took it from me.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah. Anyways,
my bad.
All right, what are we actually talking about on this podcast? It's not a fantasy football podcast.
It's not. So this is our last episode for the month of Halloween. And we're going to talk about vampires. And while talking about vampires, of course, you've got to talk about Vlad Tempest, also known as Vlad Dracula, or the Order of the Dragon. Right?
That's already news to me. Like, I knew that there was a guy that was kind of, where the lore of Dracula kind of came from.
Yeah.
Didn't you call him Vlad the Impaler? Is that like another nickname of his?
That's his nickname, Vlad the Impaler. Okay. Yeah, and we'll talk about why and things like that.
But I've never really spent much time looking into this.
But vampires. So I know we've touched on the absolutely ridiculous ones like Twilight, where they sparkle in the sun, and just
oh my god, why does it always come back to Twilight? Can't we
because that's what so many people, you talk about vampires and they're like, oh, I love Twilight. Like, why? What? What?
It's kind of like the vampire staple.
Staple of vampire lore. It's so bad.
Why is Twilight the vampire staple?
I mean, if we didn't have that, I mean, shimmery, what's the next best thing? Like the Count from Sesame Street? Like, is that the next best one?
The Count?
What?
Van!
Dude, there's so many. You got Blade, right? You got Marvel, right? You got that aspect.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
What?
Blade, whatever.
Blade was great. Blade. It revitalized Marvel. Marvel was going bankrupt. Blade came out, and Marvel all of a sudden started making money again. So Blade is solid. I'm just saying. Listen. You have what's the director's name? Anyways, Bram Stoker's Dracula. One of the first horror flicks to win be nominated for a bunch of awards and things of that nature. What was that? That was Coppola, right? Francis Ford. So
you're dropping names, man. These are
directors, yeah.
To that degree, I get on Cody for not knowing actors, but I mean, listen, you love movies on a whole nother level if you understand all the producers and directors. Me, maybe a few names you drop, I'll understand, but for the most part, I'm not going to know who directed movies. I don't pay close enough attention to it.
But Bram Stoker's Dracula, I mean, you guys, it had Keanu Reeves, it had Winona Ryder. It had, why am I drawing a blank? Gary Oldman as Dracula himself, Mr. Vlad Tempest. No, you guys never seen it?
No.
No.
Sounds old. Is it old?
I'm not going to go there with you, Cody.
They probably
I'm not
has
doing it.
That answers that
doing
question.
He's not going to answer because you're right.
Yeah.
What about Lost Boys?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen Lost Boys.
I've heard of it.
Anyways,
I was thinking the bridge scene from that movie.
Yes. Lots of vampire movies out there. I mean, long time. Christopher Lee, the guy that played Saruman in Lord of the Rings, he was an old original black and white vampire. He was Dracula back in the day. Werewolves. He played a lot of horror flicks. So the lore of vampires has been around forever. And though a lot of different, I believe, cultures have similar versions and spin-offs, one of the biggest is Vlad Tempest, who was a Romanian prince and then becomes king. So he's born in Romania in like the early 1400s or mid 1400s, somewhere in there, 15th century. And they got the Dracul name, Dracul, was given actually by the Roman Catholic Church. So they were like this country, and their army stood to protect they were, I guess, considered as crusaders in a sense, and they were said to protect against the which empire was it that they were standing against? Anyways, so Romania stood between Catholic churches to the west, and so you had these, I guess, heathen empires that were gonna, could come in and attack, and Romania stood to protect him. And so Vlad and his armies, that's what they did, right? And so he was a quote unquote man of God, protecting against Muslim forces of the Ottoman Empire. That's what it was. So you had the Ottoman Empire, which was considered Muslim, and then you had the Christian Crusaders on the Western fronts, or reversed, actually. I think, anyways, neither here nor there. And so he was a man of God, right? Some of his notable things, the whole Vlad the Impaler thing, right? So he was known as bloody and ruthless, and so when armies would kill, the Muslim combatants, they would put them on spikes and lift them up in the air and put the spikes in the ground. And so here was this Romanian warlord, and every time he would win, it was like you just see bodies in the air on spikes everywhere. So he got the ruthless name of Vlad the Impaler. Some of the things that ended up leading him to be known, or what people believed as undead and drinking blood. He was also known to drink the blood of his enemies at the head of they would bring in a table, and he would sit on the battlefield and drink blood.
Did he actually do this? Because the Impaler name, I get the putting people up on spikes. I mean, cool. I see that. Did he actually, or was it just kind of part of the lore? Like, is there actual, hey, this was a practice that he did, a ritual he did at every one of these?
Or I don't know about everyone.
People feared him so much that they built this myth up about who he was or how he acted.
Well, his own people didn't fear him, and so these are writings, some of these things, and it was just things that they believe, that I don't know that he did it at every battle, but it was it's one of those things where he is known to have done this type thing, where he may have done it on one battle or two. I don't know.
Nice. I mean, terrifying if it's true.
He was known for torture. He ordered his men to poison wells and burn crops.
Ruthless.
I don't know, man. You got me at drinking blood. I'm sorry. Here, you can have my land.
Right? I mean, he was.
Listen, I'm cool.
I think he just. It was. There was constant. According to everything I read, there was constant bombardment from the Ottoman Empire because they were trying to sweep in to take out, early Christianity, or not early, but Catholicism. They had Catholic churches, and so they were trying to take it over. And these guys were the only, the forefront. They had to constantly be battling, And so that was one thing that it said, that he had to be ruthless, or a lot of his soldiers and people that that he ruled over believed he had to be this way in order to pump fear into his enemy. So, the drinking of the blood thing, the putting people up on spikes, it was all a place of like, I'm going to pump fear, right?
Yeah.
So then there's the things that kind of get weird, not really 100% sure, because there's not any true. So he dies, I guess, in battle. Or so he was exiled and imprisoned in Hungary for like 5 years or something like that. And he was marching against the Ottomans at some point, like again for like the 100,000th time, and he gets ambushed and killed on the battlefield.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this is where it gets weird, though. Ottomans supposedly cut his body into pieces and like paraded around with like pieces of him. However, somehow family members or his son, who's now going to be the king at this point, gets the body back, or the body in pieces, and buries it in a mausoleum. Okay. Mausoleum's guarded because he's royalty. And then we go on a little bit, and now pure lore, don't know, but now the story goes into a place where, potentially the body's missing, and sightings of him as the Romanian forces go on to fight the Ottomans, or sightings of him, in fields of battle and things like that. So
they cut up his body, they put it in a mausoleum.
This is what they say. The Ottomans send messages like, "Hey, we cut up his body," right? And then somehow his son gets his body. Again, doesn't say if it's in pieces, so I don't know if that's just the Ottomans. They paraded this around like, hey, to make their forces feel a little stronger. Like, hey, we beat this warlord. We beat this strong dude. Because everything I've read, it was like, this was just a small piece. That whole cutting of the pieces thing, I think that was just a message they were trying to send. I don't think that was necessarily accurate. I do believe he was killed, and then the troops drug his body back to the sun. But neither here nor there, then the body gets buried in a mausoleum, and supposedly the body comes, so the lore says, alive.
Okay.
By the way, he's a national hero.
For Romania?
Yes. Yeah.
Still to this day?
Still to this day. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
He is considered, this is what it says, considered one of the most important rulers in Wakalyan history and a national hero of Romania. Even though he was known as an undeniably brutal ruler, his victorious campaign against the Ottoman forces, which protected both Wallachia and Europe, have won.
Wakanda?
Oh shit! I'm like, Wakanda. No, what?
It's the way you're pronouncing it. It makes it sound like
Wallachia. Anybody got that?
Yeah, Wakanda. You got it right. Wakanda.
They were more advanced technology.
Yes. And it has won him praise as a great military leader. He was even praised by Pope Pius II, who expressed admiration for his military feats and for defending Christendom. Now, there was beliefs, and this is where you just kind of full sidetrack, that before he died and went into that battle where he died, that he supposedly gave his life. He walked away from Christ and decided to give his life to Satan, so some of his followers say, and went into darker times and things like that, and mix on all that with the blood and supposedly rising from the dead, and so breeds the beginning of the vampiric regime of Lord Dracula.
So he made a deal with the devil to be Dracula or something?
Supposedly.
So he was just like, yo, what up? I know I'm a Christian and all, but like, can you give me like fangs and super speed? And he's like, yeah, dog, got you. And then he was
give
like,
me fangs and super speed.
He's like,
yes.
Eternal life? Nah, I'm going to be a vampire. Is that to the gist of it?
That's it. That was in the contract.
Okay.
Fang, super speed.
Fake super speed, but
turn
I have to
alive.
drink blood, and I can't really go outside during the day. It's like
Well,
minor drawbacks, my friend.
right.
Minor drawbacks.
Yeah, I mean, would you take it?
And no more garlic for the rest of your life. I mean, it's in itself, that's brutal.
I tried to figure out where the garlic lore came from. I don't know if maybe Andy's quick on the computer if he can.
Let's find it out.
Yeah, because I mean, the whole garlic thing. I get the crosses, right? So if you give your life to Satan, okay, crosses I can get are going to affect you. Holy water kind of makes sense.
Oh yeah, all day. You're just unholy.
Stakes to the heart. Not really, I guess, because it's the source. It pumps the blood, maybe, and that's why you got to drink blood, so stay alive.
Maybe.
But the garlic of all things.
Has anyone cut a vampire's head off to see what would happen? I mean, I'm pretty sure it would slow him down. I mean, I would go as far as to say perhaps kill him, but according to lore, maybe not. He just like put it back on his head, like nothing happened.
And it just reattaches.
Yeah, I guess so. Just because he's super demonic.
Okay. This is base level Google. I'll dig into it in a minute, but it says the traditional belief that garlic odors. It's the odor, not the garlic itself. The smell of deters vampires because it somehow vampirism ties back to the original disease for rabies, and so they believe it to be that was the intent is we're going to use garlic because apparently the odor of garlic helps or deters things that are
like dying
of rabies. Well, no, not necessarily that, but like when an animal or something has rabies, I could be wrong, but it sounds like I'm going to dig into this, but it sounds like they don't like the smell or the odor of garlic, and so it deters those beasts that are like wolves and whatnot that have rabies. That may have an aggressive side to them. So it's not that they're like allergic to it or it gives them a rash or a virus, because I know in some movies that's how they kind of depict it, but it's the odor of garlic that deters them. So they would rub garlic on their skin to make their skin less appetizing.
We've got two different theories then here. So it sounds like we have I made a deal with Satan, and then the germ theory where it's like you catch it, kind of like a cold, like a virus or something.
So you get the cold, you grow fangs, you got to drink blood to purify your blood, right? Because your blood is now toxic.
Forever. Yeah.
Forever.
Seemingly.
And so it's kind of like when you have liver issues and you get, dialysis. So it's like permanent dialysis, right? You just go and you drink the blood and then your body flushes the old blood. Get it. It makes sense. Running with it. It is plausible, right?
Or perhaps he made the deal with the devil and was like, "Listen, dog, I can't make a straight up I can't make a straight up deal with you because I gotta give it to Big G. Big G's really in charge here, but he's not giving me all these powers, right? So here's what we gotta do. It's like I'll give you part of my soul in exchange for a vampiric germ, which you don't necessarily give directly to me, but you can give to these other people, and then I'll go infect myself with it and then kill them off, thus being the only vampire left." Now, that's my theory I've just crafted. So what do you guys think about that? I think that's more plausible than anything. That kind of ties everything together,
Yeah, it does. There was a show, The Strain. Did you guys see that? It was on for like 3 seasons, I think.
The Strain?
Yeah.
Yes, it's the one where I think it was only on like 2 seasons, but the one where they have the bunker and the vampires that can all connect to one another, and
they were like it was a parasite, right? Yes. Yeah. Yes. And they were like parasites, kind of like, we're talking about viruses and stuff. It just made me think of that because it was this like parasite that would get under your skin and then you would become this vampire, right? And then you'd be controlled by the head vampire, the Nosferatu.
Who's Nosferatu again? I remember him off SpongeBob, but I don't know the significance.
I love your SpongeBob references. Gives me joy that you turn these serious topics into childlike. It's so great. I'm not mocking you. I actually enjoy this very much. Soothes my soul.
So wait, let's back up. Nosferatu was on SpongeBob?
Yeah, you don't remember that?
No.
Oh, okay. So basically there's this episode. It's called the Hashling Slasher. You guys familiar with that episode?
No.
It's basically it's like a Halloween episode. I think it's basically about So, Squidward wants to mess with SpongeBob because SpongeBob's annoying him, and he's like, "Hey, so he makes up this story about the Hashling slasher, about how the phone will ring, and there'll be no one there, and then there's two other signs, right, and then they come to fruition because Squidward's behind it all, right, and but then they start happening and Squidward's not doing it and Squidward started to get freaked out and then they see someone get off the bus and it looks like it looks like a murderer, like a hashling slash, like someone has like a weapon, they come in hooded, they're about to murder them and Squidward's super scared and then it's just some guy and it ends up to be this really weird coincidence. It wasn't supposed to be scary, but then they were like, wait, if you were on the phone and that guy was on the bus, then who was flickering the lights? And because the lights was the last thing, and then they look over at the light switch, and it's this black and white imagery of this creepy looking dude. And he's flickering these lights, and he's Nosferatu.
It's probably a spin off of the original black and white.
It is.
Yeah.
Check. Here's the actual picture that they used in the show.
Yep. That's him.
Okay.
And that is a clip from the original movie in 1922.
Yeah.
And if you actually Google that, if you Google Nosferatu, it says that Nosferatu is a vampire from the film in 1922 and is an employee at the Krusty Krab who works as a night shift manager.
Yep, there it is.
That is the wiki description of Nosferatu, which is fantastic. He also appears in the Nintendo DS version of the video game SpongeBob's Truth or Square.
Nice.
So
That's
he
awesome.
literally has Nosferatu.
Gosh.
His real name is Count Orlok, right? So, yeah, the name of the episode, if anyone wants to watch it, is called The Graveyard Shift.
Yeah.
Very
go.
funny.
There you go. So vampires run it and everything, right?
Well, I was looking up some stuff. So I know we talk about Vlad the Impaler, right? So Vlad the Impaler ties back to Dracula, and we kind of go there as the origin, but he's actually not the first mention of vampires. And when you look through it, he's labeled more of the vampire because he was victorious in battle, very brutal, and drank blood. But they don't really ever talk about fangs. They don't ever talk about how he died, right? That he was, his head was severed or anything like that. They give him that role of the vampire, that he had this bond or whatever with Satan or whatever you want to call it, and that's how he's able to live everlasting. But I went back and was like, well, what's the oldest account of vampires? And I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name, so I'm not going to try, but it was a villager from the late 1500s to the early 1600s in modern day Croatia. So it was called Istra.
Wait. But you said 1500s?
Yes, Vlad the Impaler. So but here's what I want to mention.
Because Vlad's 1400s.
Correct, but he wasn't labeled a vampire until much, much later.
Yeah, they just didn't figure out what he was.
No, he was Well, okay, I'm talking about the actual account of someone having vampire-like teeth, a hunger for blood, that kind of thing came from much later.
So let's hear about this guy. What's his name?
I'm not gonna be able to pronounce it. It's I wonder if I could literally have. It's Ur Grando Alovic. There's actually two names for him.
Sounds like a drink.
But he was considered to be a villager from the region of Istria, which is now modern day Croatia. Considered to be the first real person to be described as a vampire in history.
Oh, what about him? Let's hear this.
Nothing really about him, right? There's not a whole lot. The legend is that he 16 years after his death, they went to his grave by night, and that he used to get up and terrorize the village. That the village a village priest, and that he would come, and that bodies would be taken during this time, right? I went on to dig a little bit more, and what it really we always kind of, because I try to be the more realist on this show because you guys all believe in crazy weird things, and Cody brings up SpongeBob often, but there's a disease that was kind of happening around these times, and I'm gonna butcher the name of that too, but it's called porphyria. It's porphyria. It also has it's a term that's used for different types of diseases. There's actually a bunch of diseases kind of underneath that
attached to it, yeah.
Right, but it's caused by irregularities in the production of heme, which is a chemical in the blood, which causes causes people to have a sensitivity to light, causes them to have disfigurement of their skin, which means the pigment of their skin changes colors, or it doesn't glitter, but it gets lighter.
It doesn't glitter.
Has an erosion of the lips or gums, causing fang-like resemblance. So they're saying it almost gives him like a
Vampirism.
corpse-like look. And so when they were talking about these things of people having this drive to it, I don't know that we necessarily have a drive to blood. That usually seems to be some kind of myth, or because the difference between Vlad the Impaler and this guy that I'm mentioning is this guy was just a normal guy that died in a village, but they believed that he was tormenting the town because he kept coming, that apparently his body kept coming back and taking young men and women from the village. And this, I guess he terrorized the town for like 100+ years before.
What part of the world was this?
This is modern day Croatia, so like where Croatia is now. So not far from where we're talking.
Right. I'm just saying.
But yeah, the town was not a large town. I guess there's even a film made on the concept of this called The Vampire of My Homeland. Not that it would be in English, but it is also, there's a video of it. But it was basically for like after 16 years after he had died, the tormenting started, and it lasted well over 100 years before the village. I don't know if it ceased to exist or they all just moved away because of what was happening. And there's a whole lot more you can go into that, but I was really just looking into kind of where the concept of like the vampire teeth, the whole thing, like where did it tie back to? And then the idea is that it was kind of this creature-like thing that would come out at night, because that you don't really hear that coming out from Vlad the Impaler, right? Vlad the Impaler was brutal in war, doesn't talk about like light sensitivity, doesn't talk about any of that stuff, other than the fact that his body disappears and that he's just kind of romanticized over the years, as now turned into this concept of like the Dracula, the vampire that comes out only at night, sleeps in a coffin. All of that stuff has just been kind of, it's like the game Telephone is how I feel it, right?
Right.
So
just
from one person, one soldier to one soldier, in the battles against him, his myth and his legend grew to a point where it became so gruesome. Not to say that he wasn't, but have you looked up a picture of what Vlad the Impaler looked like?
Yeah.
Dude, it just looks like a normal dude.
Right. Well,
right?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but but that's the thing is, look up a picture of Dracula. Google the two, right? And so you the concept.
Well, I mean, once he signed the contract with the devil, I mean, he's got superpowers.
Hey,
like
man,
he's buffed up, right?
Listen, we
Not
all
exactly. Remember, he has to go get the germ later.
Yeah,
we'll get the germ later.
Yeah.
Right.
And it altered him. It altered the way he looked. He got buffed.
He got buffed. So, anyways, that was just my little dig into it, because I know that we're kind of talking about the same thing, but two things. The legend of Dracula starts with Vlad the Impaler, but that's not I think there was a strategic tie back to him as maybe being the original vampire, even though there's really it's not the same tie, right? He drank blood at the end of the war, probably to scare the crap out of the people he was fighting. Right? You would do certain things to cause fear from your enemies. Oh God, Attila the Hun was a similar person, right? Where he would do all these brutal things, and we talk about impaling. Like, you don't impale bodies just to impale bodies. You impale bodies to drive fear into your enemies. You drink your enemy's blood after war to drive. This dude didn't just sit down one day and was like, you know what I can go for? A warm cup of blood. Right. Yeah. So he did these things to drive fear. And I think with that fear comes the aberrations of what he really was.
But look at the people like Elizabeth Bathory, right? You know, she's like the Blood Queen, also known as the Vampire Queen from Hungary, where she would keep hostages in her castle keep, young women and girls thought to be like virgins from the local town. And when they finally came upon her castle, we talked about her a little bit back when we were talking about, like, you know, all the rich people drinking baby's blood. She would be bathing in blood and drinking blood, right? And so, you know, she came after Vlad. Even more recently, not super recent, but like early 1900s, there was a guy named Fritz Harman in Germany who he was convicted of killing over 20 young boys and young men, and having bit their necks and drank their blood while strangling them. That's how, and he ended up getting beheaded, which, by the way, they preserved his head. So his head is preserved and wasn't cremated until 2014. So they studied his head all the way through 2014 in the beliefs that, and he was known as, where did it say here? Vampire of Hanover. So, and there's a whole laundry list of people that fall into this description, all dating after Vlad the Impaler. That's all I'm going to say. So,
well, yeah, and there are things that happened way prior to all of this that have now been referenced in either folklore or just history in general to say that these things are vampiric, right? That this is all back to, like, I mean, for instance, I think there's a god in Egypt that is considered to be a vampiric deity, right? A Sekhmet or whatever. It's
so
considered
that's who he sold his soul to.
That apparently is the oldest vampire known to man, would be that from ancient Egypt, which is considered the term vampire wasn't used when that happened. It's considered to be like a feline monster, kind of looks almost like a cat, but essentially had ties to vampire, folklore. So you
Sphinx, perhaps.
This essentially, right? She is the daughter of Ra, the god.
Cool.
Which one's Ra?
Right.
The
Ra is the sun god.
Okay, all right.
Or the god of
like,
gods.
Isn't Ra? If I'm wrong, isn't Ra the big one that looks like a dog?
No, he's
that's Anubis, I think.
That's Anubis.
He's like a falcon.
Correct.
He's like an eagle or whatever.
Right. Oh, that's right. Right.
That's like their head god. Ra is like the main one, right?
Ra is the main guy.
God.
Yeah. So that's where it says that as she killed people, Sigma drank human blood to give her power. So that is the tie back to
So we're talking about some straight up demons here, right? This blood drinking demon, and somehow she hooked up with Vlad. And then
she hooked up with Vlad, but I think that's actually a good premise that you could play. I mean, but even like in Israel, you've got the tie to Lilith, right? Magic. Let's drop a magic reference here, right? Lilith is the vampire in the deck, right?
Yes.
Right. So there's that comes from Jewish folklore, or not? It's Jewish Israel / folklore, right? That this is like she's
I did not know that.
Dead Sea Scrolls, that whole thing, back in like 40 BC, where they talk about Lilith as a major folklore presence. Like she is considered to be, let me see here, in the Middle Ages, it's continued to grow. I'm reading like certain things here. They've tied her name to demons and spirits, right? So all of these things weren't referenced as vampires, but she is considered to be the first actual vampire. So there's all these, like, everything kind of ties back to one premise, is that the vampire word, I don't know when that particular term came into play, but when it did, it's like we went back in history and said, oh, this was a vampire.
That's what the word Nosferatu, by the way, is a Romanian word, meaning it translates to vampire. Right. So
whenever those names and those things came into play, we started going back and saying, oh, that's probably what this was. That's probably what this was. That's probably what this was. So I was trying to figure out, like, when, not necessarily current times, but when did this happen? I know you were talking about, like, there's, bodies found and skulls, and they see the fang-like teeth that, that tie in the mouth and all these things. But again, I think all of those tie back to folklore. They tie back to myths. There's no physical evidence of any of that actually happening other than just fear tacticking. So I love the stories of it all. I think that there's, some fun in being scared and thinking about these types of things, but we don't know, at least I can't tell of anybody that was, unless they had some kind of mental disability, someone that was actually considered to be a vampire through and through, or if it was just the myth of them becoming into a vampire. It's all folklore. For the most part, you can't even tie it back to a real person, with the exception of that villager that I talked about. He was a real person. There is a genealogy of him.
So, and I don't want to touch on furries too much here, but the reason I want to bring up furries is because furries are basically these people that think they're animals, right?
Correct.
There is a syndrome called Renfield syndrome where people truly believe they are vampires.
Yeah, and mental health is a
and they
really
go
big
and get
concern.
caps on. Yeah, it's very big, right?
It's a big concern. People
to the point where it's psychological. It's got a diagnosis name, right? Like,
let me ask you this. So when we term the concept of vampires, the reason we're talking about it this month, it's ties to Halloween and scary and the whole thing, right? If someone truly believes themselves to be vampires and they bite someone with the intent of drinking blood, are they not vampires?
I mean, yeah,
are they
to some extent, I guess. if they're
'Cause-
trying to drink people's blood or
Right.
just cannibals. I don't know.
The question is what do we deem a vampire? Is it something that was born a certain way that is not really human, that is a monster? I mean, I don't know how else would you better describe that? Like, we can't, like, zombies is something that's dead, so we know we're not going to see some dead thing walking around trying to eat our brains, right? I think ghosts, if you believe in the spiritual realm, I think it's possible for ghosts to be real. I think if you really, if you encourage the spirits, that if you open yourself up to stuff comes in. That's all I'm going to say to that. But vampires, it really comes down to a belief set, right? Like, if somebody firmly believes, mental disorder or not, that they are something else and that they have teeth and they can bite someone with the intention of drinking blood for whatever reason, are they crazy, or are they actually vampires?
I mean, I don't know.
It's a weird word. It's weird because
Yeah,
the reality
because
is they're all crazy people. Let's just they're all crazy. But the reality is I think that doesn't deem them not vampires. I think.
Yeah, I think you have to have powers to be a vampire.
Well, okay. So speed, strength, maybe the ability to transform or fly. Like, okay,
Into a bat.
I hear you.
Levitate things.
I hear you.
Levitate yourself.
I mean, if we're gonna use Twilight as a reference, none of that happens. I mean, I guess he's fast and he's strong.
Yeah,
they all have different powers, right? And they sparkle.
I guess you're right.
They sparkle.
Yeah.
Those aren't vampires, man. Those are like garbage. Anyways.
And I think the biggest factor too with vampires is that for the most part we understood that they don't age. Right. And in most of these stories when we talk about these vampires, they all die. Right? They all die, or they all get older, or there's things that happen. So in most folklore, they don't age, they don't get older. So yeah. So different topic. We're gonna go off in a different rabbit trail. There's the born to be a vampire, the born as a vampire and transformed into a vampire. Kind of like we were talking last week with werewolves and lycans, right? The belief that if you were bit by a vampire and the vampire wasn't to drink all your blood, that you would be transformed and now become a vampire. Right. Therefore, like, gaining powers and the ability to do certain things. I don't see a lot of that in these myths when you look at them, right? You kind of see vampires as like almost as you would witches. They were just beings and creatures that roamed and killed things. There's not a lot of talk, as far as what I can read, that these were things that were building an army or converting or,
Yeah.
So again, the Dracula thing was that Dracula was a vampire. Or he was like the original vampire. That's the story.
That's the lore behind him. Yeah, he sold his soul.
Original. He sold his soul, got the powers, and that he himself created the genealogy of vampires by drinking people's blood and converting them into vampires. That's kind of where that, like, as far as the knowledge that I have on it, which is very, very shallow. That's kind of what I've always believed around Dracula. So the story there is cool because it talks about how it can continue on, but most of the history here, what I'm reading, is like these people were just vampires. They were vampires. They were born vampires. They became vampires when they come of age, and after their death, they tormented people. Most cases, not all, but in most cases, it was after death that they tormented, not before.
Well, yeah, because that's when they fully transform, right?
Correct. Most of them lived very normal lives, or they were very brutal in life, but they were still human. And then once they died, that's when the tormenting happened. That's when tormenting of people, fear-mongering, tormenting. Anyways, towns being decimated, and then finding burial grounds with vampire bodies in them, that kind of stuff. So thoughts on the concept of vampires either being born as monsters or regular human beings transformed?
I mean, I'm still I would still be under the belief that they were, based on lore, that they were transformed. You don't know that it transpired, right? Maybe you don't know that Vlad Tempest was going around, biting, because a lot of these, like the guys in the early 1900s, one was Germany, another one was in Hungary, excuse me. And so they're not far off from Romania, right? And so, he's going around transforming people. That's just my thought. When you say born, I start thinking about Blade, right? Blade was born a half vampire, right?
Yep.
If you're half vampire, do you only have one fang?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
What did Blade have? Did Blade
He
have
had
both
two.
things?
He had
Oh,
two.
well, then
He
that
had
answers
two.
that question.
Yeah, he just sunlight didn't bother him.
Oh, so he was just a better vampire.
He was well. That's what. Yeah, like
Sounds like the less
his-
vampire you are, the better vampire you are.
his that's exactly his enemies thought he was like the best because he could go out in the sun and didn't have their weaknesses. So, but most of their strengths. But anyways, he's a Marvel character. We're talking about the real life Dracula here. So,
Are we?
the real deal. Yeah, listen to this. So ABC News in 2009 wrote a whole article on this. This is the title of this article: "Coming Out of the Coffin: Vampires Among Us." Subtitled, "Many self-described vampires fear ostracism from family and coworkers." In the beginning of the article, I just want to read a few excerpts here. It says, "They roam our streets and tend to the sick. People who describe themselves as real-life vampires have found ways to live quietly among us." This was a quote from a woman named Kira who believes she is a psychic vampire. "I'm not going to worry and waste sleep at night over who might think I'm a little kooky because I think I'm a vampire." She is a registered nurse who works in a hospital in Atlanta. She did not want to be identified by her real name. So Kira is not her real name, I guess. She says, "I try to be very ethical about what I do. I feed predominantly from crowds so as not to cause harm." Got that? So she's a psychic vampire. She says that other vampires, so she feeds off of psychic energy. Other vampires known as sanguinarians or blood drinkers claim to feed on the blood of consenting donors, as she exclaimed. So they're out there.
There's a vampire community.
Apparently.
That's cool.
I mean, if there was, most of them should be super wealthy by now. Let's just put it out there. Like, again, eternal
the ones that
life.
have lived forever. Yeah.
As long as
Maybe
you're
they
able,
are.
as long
George
as you're able
Soros?
to drink, right?
Maybe we should hashtag George Soros and get him to comment.
That's the quickest way to get a brick thrown at you. Like, where did that pile of bricks come from? I don't know.
I don't know. Oh man. So anyway,
Well, I mean,
would you guys be a vampire if you could?
Okay.
If it was a real thing. If Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Tempest, Vlad Dracula, whatever many names he has, rolled up on you and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a choice. You die or you take on this."
I mean,
No,
if I
I'd-
could,
Yeah,
if
I
I
take it.
if I could feed off psychic energy and not blood,
No. I mean, the psychic energy thing, that's just some weird nurse out of Atlanta. I don't know what she's
true.
doing. I'm talking like he's gonna suck on a little bit of your blood, maybe feed you a little bit of his. I don't know how that whole thing works. And then you're gonna die. You're gonna resurrect. You're gonna have fangs. You're gonna live by night, not by day. Superpowers, of course.
that's you're paying too much for superpowers there.
Well, I mean,
Paying too much?
faster, stronger.
Yeah, I mean, okay, listen. First off,
Call it what you want.
no one's sucking on my neck. Okay, let's just put that out there. Like, that's a no go from the start. Second,
My
I
wife
gotta
ain't having
die
that.
to get the powers. Like,
Well,
I'm
yeah.
good. I'm
It's
good.
a lie. What do you mean?
No,
it's a
I
lie?
gotta die to get the powers. It's like,
You have to die.
listen, as a guy that is skeptical of most things, I'm already thinking like I'm getting scammed. So wait, let me hear you out. You want to suck on my neck and I have to die to get what you're paying me? No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Just take me out. Just take me out.
Deuces.
I don't listen. I don't. I'm sorry, but I don't spend that kind of money on people. Like I gotta see the goods up front. Can you give me a
Cody,
little taste of this power now?
I think Cody would do it. He as a chance to be Nosferatu in SpongeBob. Money.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that sounds like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Literally.
You can't beat that. Can't beat it.
You can.
No,
You can.
can't.
Apparently,
You're just
garlic
better in
and
every
a
other
cross.
way. You're just better. I
Listen,
mean,
What would your Cody? What would your
every-
wife think of you if you were a vampire? I mean, like, what would be her standpoint?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would just have to outlive her. It wouldn't be a
The
problem.
the reality is he wouldn't care because at some point his emotions would die out because he's gonna live it past her another 1,000 years. So, what do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? Like, hey babe, sorry, didn't consider your thoughts in this. Wanted superpowers and the ability to fly at night.
Had to sacrifice my life. Let a dude drink from my neck. But
Okay, all right. We have gotten furries and dudes drinking from necks in this episode.
and
good.
psychic vampires that are apparently nurses, registered nurses in Atlanta. By the way, ABC.
Okay,
article.
how is it that even the simplest of myths have gotten so twisted and so weird? Like what?
It's great. Great where people's minds go.
We've gone from werewolves and lichens to furries, and then psychic vampires that feed off people's. Come on, people! Like don't
work in hospitals, by the way, and take people's blood daily. I'm just saying, like,
it's just
you're gonna look at your nurse next time and go, are you one of those?
Don't make vampires complicated. All right, like they ain't got a glitter. They drink blood regardless if it's consented or not. Yeah.
Come to suck your blood.
Oh my god. So I'm gonna give my kids reference because I've got kids. We love the Transylvania movies with Adam Sandler.
Man, they're fantastic.
And we're walking out of the game on Friday, and Reagan goes, "Hey, Dad." And I went, "What?" She goes, "Blah blah blah."
Blah blah blah.
They just love that, blah blah blah, because that's what they assume to be vampires. So blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they say in Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah, that's what I was dropping. That was the reference. Yeah. So they love that movie. I think there's 3 or 4 of those movies. I think they're great. But
fantastic.
Anyways, that's
we're wrapping up Halloween month. It was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Cool. So on to Christmas.
Stop. Get out of here. The next 4 weeks will be about Thanksgiving and turkeys, and maybe my birthday. Yes. And Cody's. I mean, his is there too.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah. The older I get, the more I'm like, I don't need anything. I just need a day to do what I want to do.
To chill. Yeah.
So.
Heck
all right. Cool.
Well, happy Halloween, everyone. Hope you guys have a lot of fun out there. Watch out for those vampiric nurses. Make sure you check their background before they take your blood. Anyways, Twisted World fam, we love you. We're out.
Peace out.
Later.